Picture this. For nearly 500 years after the massive Mauryan Empire fell, the Indian subcontinent was essentially a politically fragmented puzzle. You had various dynasties, the Shungas, the Satavahanas, the Kushans. They all rose and fell, but nobody could quite put all the pieces back together and unite the territory. Well, that is until the 4th century. A new power emerged right out of the ashes of the Kushan Empire, and they didn't just unite northern India, they set the stage for an absolute explosion of intellect and culture. We are, of course, talking about the Gupta Empire.
But here's the big question we're tackling in today's explainer. Out of a roughly 250-year dynastic run, why is one very specific 100-year window universally celebrated as India's golden age? See, it wasn't just about military muscle or drawing lines on a map. This specific century saw such a phenomenal, mind-bending peak in art, science, mathematics, and religion that it systematically debunked those later colonial narratives claiming the region lacked its own structured historical achievements. So let's dive in and uncover exactly why this era was so extraordinary.
Here is our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with the rise and great emperors, move into administration and feudatories, explore the golden age of science, check out art, religion, and culture, and finally look at the fall of the empire. Okay, Section 1. Rise and great emperors. Forging an empire.
So, the dynasty was technically founded around 240 CE by a subordinate ruler named Sri Gupta, somewhere near modern-day Prayagraj. But the real shift? That happens in 320 CE with Chandragupta I. He's really considered the true founder. Through a brilliant, highly strategic marriage to a princess from the powerful Lichvavi dynasty, he elevated the Guptas from just local rulers to a full-blown imperial power, even adopting the title King of Kings. And that move essentially paved the way for a massive multi-generational expansion that ran all the way to Skandagupta in the late 5th century.
Then you have Chandragupta I's successor, Samudragupta. This guy is widely known as the Napoleon of India. The famous Allahabad pillar inscription tells us he was an absolute military powerhouse. I mean, he ruthlessly exterminated 9 kings of northern India, or Aryavarta, but he wasn't just a brute, he was incredibly strategic. When he marched south, he didn't even try to rule those distant lands directly. Instead, he defeated the kings and turned them into loyal tribute-paying subjects. His influence was so massive, it stretched all the way to a diplomatic relationship with the king of Ceylon, which is modern-day Sri Lanka.
Now, right before the empire hit its cultural peak, there's this fascinating, almost movie-like micro-narrative. After Samudragupta, a king named Ramagupta briefly took the throne. According to historical dramas, he was a pretty weak ruler who, out of sheer fear, actually surrendered his own wife, Queen Dhruvadevi, to invading Shatka forces just to save himself. Enter his brilliant brother, Chandragupta II. He launches a daring rescue mission, saves the queen, claims the throne for himself, and marries her. By securing the borders and expanding all the way to the western coast, Chandragupta II officially kicked off the true golden age.
Section 2. Administration and feudatories, the double-edged sword.
Unlike the incredibly rigid, heavy bureaucracy of the Mauryan Empire from centuries prior, the Guptas kept things surprisingly flexible. They built a highly decentralized power hierarchy. Sure, you had the central king, but below him, the empire was chopped up into provinces called buktis, run by governors known as uparakas. Those were then broken down into districts called vishayas, managed by vishayapatis. And right down at the grassroots level, local village affairs were handled by the Gram Sabha. Honestly, it functioned a whole lot like our modern system of states, counties, and local city councils.
But here is the really crucial point. The Samanta system. When the Guptas conquered a neighboring kingdom, they often didn't even bother removing the local king. Instead, they just made him a Samanta, basically a feudatory. This king paid taxes, pledged military support, but was otherwise left to rule his own people autonomously. It was a brilliant, super cost-effective tool for rapid expansion. But definitely keep this structure in the back of your mind, because this decentralized power is a double-edged sword that is absolutely going to return to haunt them later.
Section 3. Golden Age Science. Marvels of the Ancient World. Okay, if you want undeniable physical proof of their advanced engineering, look no further than the Meherali Iron Pillar. It's standing right near the Qutub Minar in modern Delhi. It was erected during the time of Chandragupta II. And get this, it has stood totally exposed to the elements for 1,500 years without a single speck of rust. Seriously, it's the ultimate proof that Gupta-era metallurgy was literally centuries ahead of its time.
The Gupta court basically patronized the intellectual superheroes of the ancient world. You've got Aryabhata, who literally busted the worldwide myth that space demons swallowed the sun during an eclipse. He proved it was just the mathematical movement of planets, and oh yeah, he also calculated the exact value of pi. Then there's Varahamihira, an early environmental pioneer who wrote whole manuals on how to grow fruits out of season. Brahmagupta was laying down foundational geometry, and Shushruta, an absolute medical giant who pioneered over 300 surgical procedures, including early cosmetic surgery and cataract removals. This relentless explosion of knowledge is exactly why we call it a golden age.
Section 4. Art, Religion, and Culture. A cultural renaissance. So this scientific boom we just talked about, it was matched only by a massive revival of Hinduism, heavily supported by the Gupta kings, who were devoted to Vishnu and Shiva. Before this era, temples weren't really built of stone or brick. The Guptas changed the game completely, with enduring structures like the brick temple at Patargon and the Dashavatara temple at Deogarh. They also formalized society's religious texts by compiling great epics like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana along with the Puranas. Culturally, you had artists painting those breathtaking, vibrant frescoes at the Ajanta caves. Literature hit its absolute peak with writers like Kalidasa. He penned masterpieces like Abhijna Sakuntalam. And let's definitely not forget education. King Kumaragupta laid the foundation for the legendary Nalanda University. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do they afford all of this? None of this incredible cultural output happens without serious cash. And that brings us to the guild system, or shreni. These were completely autonomous organizations of merchants and artisans. Because kings like Chandragupta II conquered the western coasts of Gujarat and Malwa, the empire gained direct access to booming international maritime trade routes. These guilds managed all that immense wealth and operated with significant political and economic autonomy. They were literally the financial engine driving the prosperity of the entire Golden Age. Section 5. The Fall of the Empire. A Tragic Collapse. So, by the 6th century, this seemingly invincible empire begins to completely unravel. At their peak, they had unmatched military control and a booming economy. But then came the fatal blows, the Hunas. These were fierce, relentless nomadic warriors pouring in from across the Hindu Kush mountains. While earlier kings like Skandagupta fought them off bravely, his successors were, well, they were simply too weak. Huna leaders like Toramana and the notoriously brutal Mihirakula captured massive chunks of western and central India. And this wasn't just a military loss, it completely severed the Guptas' access to those highly lucrative western trade routes. The economy was absolutely shattered.
And hey, remember that double-edged sword we talked about earlier, the decentralized Samanta system? Well, as the central Gupta kings went bankrupt and lost their military might to the Hunas, those powerful local feudatories basically smelled blood in the water. Take Yashodharman of Malwa, for example. This powerful Samanta actually successfully fought off the Huna invaders himself, but instead of handing that awesome victory back to the Gupta kings, he turned right around, challenged the empire, and declared himself independent. Across Bengal, Bihar, and Gujarat, local rulers did the exact same thing, completely shattering the empire from within.
The Gupta Empire may have tragically collapsed under the immense weight of foreign invasions and internal rebellion, but just look at what they left behind. When you study advanced geometry, when you look at the structure of modern Hinduism, or when you marvel at the origins of complex surgery and astronomy, you are looking directly at their legacy. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of our modern understanding of the world was actually forged 1,500 years ago by an empire that dared to cultivate a true golden age?